really amazing that so many people would show up for this, for a tour. It's really cool, so thank you. We're going to do something we've never done before. The facility's actually closed down and out of what I call Gmp Mode, which means we can all walk through and do whatever we want. Usually, if you've ever taken a tour, you'd have to be totally gowned up. You're not allowed in any of the rooms. You're looking through the viewing. So what we did on Friday was we closed the whole facility down. We took everything out. All the manufacturing is shut down. And now we're just going to freely walk through the facility, which means Monday we're going to spend the whole day re-sanitizing the facility and getting it set up for new operations again. So I'm going to take you through the office, just show you a couple things real quick, then we go out to manufacturing. I'm going to show you what we do here, and you actually get a chance to see our newest product coming off the line, and you'll get a bottle of it. Does anybody here know what the term GMP stands for?
Good manufacturing practice.
Good manufacturing practice. It's not just a term, it's actually created by the FDA. There's a regulation called CFR 111, which is a regulation for manufacturing of dietary supplements. It's supposed to be regulated very heavily by the FDA, but unfortunately they have no manpower to actually regulate, so very few facilities in the country actually get audited. We've been audited 5 times so far, because we were audited the first time back in 2005, before these regulations even came, under pharmaceutical codes. So once we're on there, we get audited every year to year and a half now, and it's a surprise audit. The last one was a couple months ago. It was a 3-week audit, where the auditor was here 9 to 5 every day, and they don't just walk through the facility, they actually go through record after record after record, checking calculations, looking over everything to make sure you're adhering to the rules. The interesting thing about it is they have their own regulations. We are much stricter than their regulations. Once we create a regulation stricter than theirs, we have to create an SOP, an operating procedure. It has to be documented. Anybody in the facility that uses it has to be trained and documented. When the FDA comes in to audit us, we not only have to adhere to their regulations, we have to adhere to all of our regulations that we made much tougher. So the correct term is called C-GMP, Current Good Manufacturing Practices. Our audit finished a couple months ago. We did a totally clear audit, no observances, which is what when they find something they want you to fix, they'll write you up on it. So we got 0, first time ever, not a damn thing after literally 3 weeks of investigation, no warning letters or anything like that, nothing at all. And then about 2 weeks later, 3 or 4 weeks later, we started to rip our entire facility down. And the whole industry started talking behind our backs, saying, they must have got nailed, they must have got in trouble, now they're redoing their facility. No, we explained this not by desperation. Normally when somebody gets audited, all of a sudden you see them cleaning all kinds of crap up. We did it by inspiration. We did this all for you guys because we don't want to adhere to FDA regulations. We are what we call our own term, B-GMP, beyond GMP, beyond good manufacturing practices. And our practices here go way, way, way beyond the minimum that the FDA and other regulatory agencies require. He sells NutraBio products. So I went to visit because they're doing so well with our products that they rebuilt their store like 6 months ago. And when I went in there, this was how they did their entire store. And I was like, wow, they branded it a lot better than us. So I came back and I just copied them. But we're not taking credit for anything. But come on in here. This is just our customer service pitch. You guys call in here all the time and speak to Anthony and all those people. They'll be over here answering. You can come in here, we'll just walk right around. So this is our new, it's not finished yet, but this is our new lab. And this is one of the most important parts of the whole company, so I want to explain it to you when you come in. So yes, the counters are really ugly. They're temporary. They're our old counters. We just rebuilt everything. We couldn't get the counters put in time for the weekend, so we put our old counters up here just to make it look like it's operational. But if everybody just quickly walk in, as fast as you can. So we started a lot of things in this industry that nobody else does. And one of the things we're really proud of it is the testing that we do. So when we get a new ingredient, the first thing we have to do is we have to qualify a manufacturer. So we'll either have to send somebody to China or Brazil or wherever, or we'll go ourselves. So what we do first is we have to qualify the manufacturer. We have to make sure that this manufacturer is up to our standards, okay? The second thing we have to do is qualify an ingredient. So we will get samples of that ingredient, we'll get their C of A, their certificate of analysis, we'll test it against their own certificate of analysis, we'll test it against our standards, it'll go out to third-party labs, it'll go out for purity, potency, composition, identity, heavy metals, microbial. If it passes both their own criteria and it passes our criteria, then that's step one. It means it's allowed to be purchased by our purchasing agent. After that, every single batch of raw material, and we're talking thousands of them, 400 to 500, sometimes up to 1,000 batches of material coming into this facility every month, goes into a separate warehouse over here, a quarantine warehouse. And it stays there. It goes into a clean room, it gets sampled, it comes into this lab, which isn't set up yet. This is a new lab, the other lab is over there. And it goes through our testing, and these two machines, this whole setup between these machines and the background to do it costs us about $1 million. These machines are about $120,000 each. And to build the libraries to identify ingredients in the computer so that these machines understand what they're looking at, the whole system was about $1 million investment in what we call identifying a material. So if we bring in creatine monohydrate, we will sample it, it'll come in here. This machine will tell us yes it is or no it isn't. Then we'll go through other tests that are like more qualitative tests, maybe pH, particle analysis, organoleptic, like color, and all different types of stuff like that. If it passes this base testing in-house, every single batch of material leaves here and gets sent to a third-party independent lab and gets tested all over again for quantitative. That means like an HPLC analysis. For example, our creatine monohydrate has to be 99.98% purity. If it's anything below that, it's not acceptable, it's not allowed in. So we do double testing. We do in-house testing on every single batch. Then if it passes, it goes to third-party independent testing outside of our facility. Then it goes back to our lab. We have a PhD who runs the lab. If she accepts it all, it gets signed off, and it's allowed out of our quarantine facility and into our manufacturing. This is probably one of the most important parts of this whole tour, that little bit of information, because we still, with all these manufacturers across the world, knowing that we're going to test their stuff over and over again, we still reject over 8% of every batch that comes into this facility. That's why sometimes we'll have products on back order. There are times where we won't even have a product for 6 months to a year because the harvest of a particular herb across that part of the country where it's made just doesn't meet our spec, and we can't get it in from any manufacturer. So we've had ingredients here that we don't even carry anymore because they just don't meet the spec that they claim to be. So we've got to shut that stuff down. So every single raw material that comes into the facility goes through that type of testing. And then what we do is it goes out to third party. These machines continue to work. We will take more and more of the samples out of every container that's on that, and we will test them to make sure it's creatine. Why do we do that? Because people screw up. Manufacturers screw up. Truckers screw up. We once had a truckload of leucine come in. It tested out. There were 3 batches, I think, in the truckload. All 3 batches tested out to 99 point whatever % our purity regulation was. But when we started testing the individual containers, we had 7 failures. 7 of them were isoleucine, a more expensive ingredient. Nobody was trying to rip us off. Had we not done that type of testing, your BCAs would have been isoleucine, and valine instead of leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So a lot of companies will make mistakes, or a lot of companies try and rip us off on a regular basis. We put a company out of business called Raw Deal. They sold $50 million worth of raw material in a wholesale value to companies like us. Those companies used it. They got raided by the FDA. The FDA found out that this material was fake. They couldn't arrest them. They couldn't get them criminal because they're not responsible to test it. All these laws are on us, the end user. But the raw ingredient guys don't have to test anything, so they blamed it on their contractors in China. The FDA actually raided us. They came in here with guns and badges because they saw all of these messages from our PhD back to them saying your material failed, your material failed, your material failed. Nobody else tested it out of that $50 million. It was all used going into products in GNC Vitamin Shop all over the world. They thought that they caught us. We were the scapegoat. They caught us. We knew it failed, and we used it. Well, after 3 days of investigation, they found out we didn't use any. We tested it all. We returned every single batch. We never used the product. We had disqualified them as a vendor. They then had that material and proof that that vendor knew it was phony because we shipped it back to them with analysis of a third party. Now they had proof of criminality. He went to jail for, I think, 3 to 5 years, and millions of dollars of fines. $50 million, you know what that is on a retail basis? It's gotta be $200-300 million worth of product on the street that was totally fake. 99% of it was maltodextrin instead of vitamin and mineral blend. So that's, you know, what we have to go through to make sure. So this, the long part of the pitch right here, but this room right here and that testing to make sure your end product has exactly what's supposed to be in it is the hardest part of everything we do here.